South Africa has announced 354 cases of the coronavirus, the most new cases recorded in one day, and bringing the total in the country to 5,350. It comes a day before the country is due to ease some lockdown restrictions. The country is planning to reopen its agriculture sector and allow some manufacturing and retail to resume. Meanwhile, thousands of people lined up for nearly 2.5 miles for emergency food parcels in the South African city of Centurion on Wednesday. A number of businesses donated 8,000 food hampers, which were given out to residents in the informal settlement. South Africa has spent 5 weeks under tough restrictions, requiring most of the population to stay at home apart from making essential trips. The measures have left many struggling to make ends meet in the recession-hit economy. Meanwhile, the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has criticized South Africa for accepting more than 200 Cuban medics to help battle the virus. Mr. Pompeo accuses Cuba of profiting from the pandemic. The team of Cuban medics arrived in the southern African nation on Sunday night. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has reacted to Pompeo's accusation, saying the United States lies deliberately when they attack Cuba's International Medical Corporation with lies and slanders. Internationally, Cuban doctors have won admiration for work in some of the toughest public health contexts on record. When Ebola struck West Africa in 2014, Cuba sent more healthcare workers to assist than any other country. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now to bring us up to speed on the situation in the country. Betty, how are South Africans, especially the medical associations, reacting to the extra hands from Cuba?
Well, for the many who know the historical ties between South Africa and Cuba, especially the role played by the Cuban government of Fidel Castro at the time in the struggle against apartheid, the financial and all other support given, they're quite welcoming. If you had seen the scene at the airport, it was quite emotional for even some of the ministers, the way they welcomed them. And many are happy, but the medical association, the South African Medical Association, SAMA, as well as DENOSA, that's the Democratic Nursing Organization of South Africa, they had released statements, and some other medical health organizations released statements raising concerns about the government not consulting them enough. They said they don't have issues with the Cuban doctors present, but they were not consulted enough, and that we're in a country where you have a lot of medical personnel looking for work, doctors, nurses, and all other medical technicians as well. That was their issue. But the Minister of Health, Dr. Zwelim Kize, had spoken to them. He raised it at a press conference he held about 2 nights ago, telling them that they're just there to augment what's being done locally, and that those who are not engaged in the medical profession at this point can actually get in touch with their provincial health departments so that they will find a way to get involved. That the main aim of them having the Cuban doctors or the Cuban medical personnel in the country is for them to help, and the fact that their primary health care is an area where they're very strong in Cuba, and South Africa seems to be weak. So they're there to support, share experience with the locals who are already doing and have been doing for a couple of months now. I know that the fact that their presence comes at a cost is also an issue that some of the local medical people have, had issues with. It's not charity. The presence of the Cuban doctors or Cuban medical personnel comes at a cost. And we know how the economy here is, and we're talking a lot of cost. If you have over 200 medical personnel who will be deployed across 9 provinces in the country.
We know, Betty, this lockdown has had a massive impact on the South African economy. But on May the 1st, South Africa will move from level 5 of lockdown, that's the strictest one available, down to level 4. What's the difference here? What will South Africans be able to do from Friday?
From Friday, May the 1st, South Africans are allowed to go out to jog on the streets, to walk on the streets between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. Of course, some people have issues with that, saying if you put a limit to the time people will be on the street to jog or walk, there will be a crowd. The rule is that there should not be any group exercise anywhere. Also, from the 1st of May, many sectors will be allowed to open their doors to business. The food sector, which has really suffered a lot with the lockdown, they're allowed to make food. That's warm meals. They're allowed to make food, and but not for people to sit in. People will have to order online and then have the food delivered. Various other sectors, manufacturing, the mining sector, petroleum sector, the IT sector, the media, of course, can expand the presence of personnel in their businesses.
Betty, before I let you go, I want to bring your attention to, that video that's circulating of thousands of people lining up for food. Help us understand what exactly is happening here. There doesn't seem to be any form of social distancing in place.
What you see there is a queue for food parcels. That's around Moy Plaza and Spruit, just near Centurion, close to Pretoria. It's around what they call informal settlement outside of Centurion. That's Moy Plaza and Spruit. A lot of the people there were on the queue, stretching about 3 kilometers. What makes the difference here? It's a sight we see in most places where food parcels are being seen, but this one is extraordinary because the bulk of the people living in that area are foreign nationals. We know that a lot of the efforts by government here is focused on the citizens of the country. So many of the foreigners who cannot go to work, cannot earn, who are not, passport citizens of the country are not eligible for a lot of the relief that people are getting. So many churches and country associations have been helping. But in this case, it's the Tswane Muslim community and some business communities in the area that decided that these people are hungry too. So they packaged about 8,000 food hampers actually in that place were distributed. But you have over 10,000 people living in that area. So the queue stretching over 3 kilometers is for people, mostly foreign nationals who are queuing to get food hampers from these people who packaged. They just felt that there was a need for them to help because these people do not qualify with the criteria to benefit from a lot of the relief efforts that the government of the country has been giving out to the people of the country.
All right, thanks once again, Betty, our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Dibia, bringing us up to speed on the situation in the country.